Tito's working really hard on her career, I can tell. He's running around doing his He already
Dana White, who was born on July 28, 1969, grew up in Manchester, Connecticut, and is best known as the one who aided in the growth of Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, a leading organization of mixed martial arts, MMA. Throughout his career, starting as UFC president in 2001, he has indeed been a game changer. Leading the UFC, he transferred it from a struggling to a global leading sport worth $10 billion after the merger with WWE in 2023. Some of the most relentless and graceless approaches he took at times included critical strategies, like fights in the US, including approval for MMA marketing in the US, obtaining multi-millionaire broadcast rights, and so on. White has also played a key role in making UFC a renowned brand in non-Western markets, such as Abu Dhabi, Brazil, and China, and expanding its global influence factor through the organization of high calendar events, promotion, and advertisement. However, the administration under White witnessed a fair share of controversies as well. He created an uproar between fighters and himself through his leadership, which has been a little abusive and rebellious. The pages of history are full of incidents that tell the story of Dana White's conflicts with other fighters of the UFC. Which fighter did he go after? What did he have to go after? What happened to his victims? Stick with us until the end, and let's find out. Randy Couture, the icon, and his exit. Randy Couture, a former UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion and a Hall of Famer, was embroiled in a dispute with Dana White in 2007. Couture's discord came about primarily due to the fighter pay issues and the UFC's struggle to schedule a match with Emelianenko, who at the time was seen as a heavyweight outsider of the UFC roster. Couture accused Dana White and UFC of providing inadequate compensation to its top fighters in light of the income the company was generating. Subsequently, as a countermeasure, Dana White accused him of destroying the company's reputation and prevented Couture from engaging in other fights, thus bringing about the legal squabble that exposed the horrors of UFC contracts. Despite the impasse, Couture made a return to the UFC in 2008, which was a consideration of his love for the game, but it also revealed the business dynamics of international fighters. This drama still stands as one of the most remarkable case studies on this subject of fighters' rights. The incident also placed into the point of view of the self-control exercised by the UFC over external bargaining that could create long-term resentment among fighters and pave the way for altercations at a later stage. Couture's resignation, when all is said and done, opened a greater view of the UFC's labor practices. However, the issues of control and pay disparities still linger. Looks like Randy fought for fighters' rights, but Dana kept lashing back at him with a contract that was evidently tighter than his anaconda choke. Tito Ortiz, personal vendettas, and professional feuds. The history between Dana White and Tito Ortiz wasn't just about competing on a professional level, but there was some considerable personal hatred as well. They were once friends, and it all started to change when Ortiz began asking for more money and promotion. Ortiz, former champion of the UFC, accused White of abusing the fighters in order to get profit while not appreciating the work put in by him, even for the success of the UFC. The rivalry reached a climax in 2007, when Ortiz and Dana White planned a promotional boxing match, which never happened. Even after Ortiz left the company, White continued to dismantle his reputation by calling him unprofessional and difficult to deal with.
No, Tito's working really hard on her career, I can tell. He's running around doing his He already her career up.
His match with UFC was symbolic of growing strains over payments and idealism of treating fighters as the resources for the company instead of partners in the business. Many of Ortiz's battles added to the crucial aspect of ensuring that there are relevant discussions on fighters' rights and representation. His matches cut across the narrative of fighters, as there was an increasing demand to have more control over their careers. These two were once friends, but their friendship tapped faster than Tito in his retirement match. Nyah. Chris Cyborg, gender bias and professional disputes. Cristiane Cyborg Justino is considered by many to be one of the most electrifying female competitors in the history of MMA. However, her relationship with Dana White has been said to be very tense. Their conflict goes back all the way to 2016, when Cyborg, despite being one of the most appreciated fighters in the division, was not offered the chance to compete for the first women's featherweight championship of the UFC. White has been accused of delaying contract signing for Cyborg, not being in her favor, and making derogatory remarks about comparing her appearances to male fighters. Cyborg left the organization in 2019 after a history of disagreements about marketing strategies and pay for fighters. Her story has shed some light on the extraordinary obstacles that women athletes encountered in the midst of this male-centered sport in terms of getting equally treated and given chances. Cyborg's own experience also served as a call for the advancement of diversity and inclusion within the world of UFC, as it began more progressive discussions about women's rights within MMA. Due to her, now female fighters continue to advocate for better treatment and respect. Given this, we say that some of the hardest punches come outside the octagon, and Dana White doesn't like people acting in ways he doesn't want them to act. Like this video so far? What are your thoughts on Dana White and how he dealt with these fighters? Let us know in the comments below. Francis Ngannou, a heavyweight exodus. Francis Ngannou, a one-time champion in the heavyweight class of the UFC and well known for his finishing ability through strikes, became a focal point in discussions surrounding the rights of fighters in the UFC, as well as their remuneration. After a long negotiation period with White, Ngannou left the organization in early 2023. This was after he was unable to secure an agreement that would increase his salary and allow him an opportunity to pursue boxing fights. Francis leaving the UFC shows he learned a thing or two by watching YouTube videos like this, and probably figured it's best not to steer up too much of a debate with Dana White. The highlighted importance of the shift from UFC to PFL signaled an increase in competition within the MMA sphere. In this blunt manner, White commented on Ngannou's decision to also switch and claimed that he was hard to deal with. Ngannou, however, described himself, alongside other fighters who switched to the PFL, as members that geared away from the natural UFC to take a stand against the Unionist Strikers, Inc. This then quickly expanded to speak about combat sports rights and working environments. Ngannou's exit allowed for a rediscovery of how the tensions have been evolving between the employees and management, specifically under the context of an increase in fighter influence. His departure, on the other hand, also demonstrated how pliable the expectations of the athletes fighting within the UFC are, especially when fighters barely achieve half of what they request. Jon Jones, talent meets controversy. What do you do when you don't like them, but you still need them? Call in Dana White. He likes to keep such athletes in check, and he has his own way of doing it. Jon Jones is, without a doubt, the most notable fighter in the UFC, as his history is marked by brilliance, but also stupidity. His dealings with Dana White have seen arguments about his remuneration and disagreement on his conduct outside of fights. His demand for increased pay, especially for a title fight against potential heavyweight challengers, made his negotiations with the UFC extremely difficult for a number of years. Regardless of all this, Jones last fought in November 2024 and wants to continue cementing his legacy. Jones is someone who's seemingly been difficult to manage because he's a major star. Jones and White have a very strained relationship, and their relationship dynamic demonstrates how challenging it is to please stars whilst trying to run a business. Nate Diaz, the rebellious star. Throughout his UFC career, Nate Diaz, who's known for his unique fighting techniques and rebellious attitude, has been a tough nut to crack for Dana White. Diaz's dealings with White included disagreements over his fight promotions and his ranking in UFC as a fighter. Even with these issues, however, he remained relevant and a good draw for the UFC until his exit in 2022, which also demonstrates the curious combination of adoration and subjugation of the athlete. which is witnessed in the American professional realm of sports. Nate's exit, however, was largely fueled by his discontent with his job and promotional aspects, and it illustrated the limitations of the UFC brand in dealing with the fighters who are ready to speak out. His exit also illustrated the growing picture of fighters who seem to be taking more control over their careers, as well as growing the tide of fighter control. The legacy of the fighter, however, is what continues to motivate the next generation of fighters to make a claim for more rights and representation. Overall, it looks like Diaz wasn't just facing opponents. He was up against contracts, rankings, and Dana's patience. And that's it for this video. Here are a few others you'll definitely enjoy. Remember to give this one a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more.